Welcome everyone to this Exposure Ninja webinar all about conversion rate optimization. My name is Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm the founder of Exposure Ninja. While we are waiting for people to drip feed in, let me know where you're watching from in the chat window. Feel free to answer any questions. Wait, you asked them, I'll answer. Feel free to ask any questions as we go in the little chat window that you'll see on YouTube, or if you're watching this on LinkedIn, then you can ask any questions there as well. We're going to get going in just a couple of minutes once we've allowed people to get tuned in. But today we are talking all about conversion rate optimization, and I'm going to be sharing some proven techniques to supercharge your website's conversion rate. This is one of the most important areas in all of digital marketing. The performance of your website has such an impact on the performance of all of your digital marketing work. And if we can improve the performance of your website, then that makes all of the other traffic driving stuff that you're doing that much more effective. So we're going to be going through some of the principles that we work from when we're doing this with clients. I'm going to be sharing some examples and also giving you some statistics as well as we go throughout today. Like I said, if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat as we go. I've got a little screen where I can see all the questions that are coming in, so I'll try and answer them throughout, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end as well. Alrighty, so I think let's get started. We are going to be covering some the three key principles of conversion rate optimization. My name's Tim, though. I founded a digital marketing agency called Exposure Ninja. We do a lot of this stuff for our clients, and a lot of the examples I'm going to show you today, in fact, I think all of the examples I'm going to show you today and the numbers I'm going to give you are from our own client campaign work. Conversion rate optimization is one of the services I think that we do which has the highest ROI, and a lot of the awards that we win for campaigns and a lot of our biggest success stories actually involved us either rebuilding our client's website at the start or having a lot of input into the conversion rate optimization of that site. Just because, well, I'll show you the numbers in a minute, but just because the leverage that that type of work gets on your overall digital marketing performance is absolutely massive. So, what is conversion rate optimization? Well, conversion rate optimization, as the name suggests, is optimizing the conversion rate. The conversion rate is the percentage of people that come onto your site that take some sort of desired action, so becoming a lead or a sale, typically. Why should you care? Because this is super leverage on everything that you do. Let me just show you an example. So let's say that you have a website like this, which is in the mortgage space in the US. This website, no affiliation to us at all. We do have clients in this area, but this is not one of them. Now, typically a website like this, say that they get 1,000 visitors, they might have let's say a 1% conversion rate, sometimes even less than a 1% conversion rate. So let's say they had a 0.5% conversion rate. Well, out of that 1,000 visitors, which by the way might be their monthly traffic, if they're very low traffic, it might be their weekly traffic, it might be their daily traffic, it might be their hourly traffic, it may even be just the real-time amount of visitors that they're getting on the site. But let's say they had a 0.5% conversion rate, then they'd be expecting to get 5 leads from that 1,000 visitors. This sounds pretty wasteful because it is. That means that 995 of those visitors would just be gone forever. Of course, the downside of all of this is that they spent money on those 995 people. They spent money getting them onto the site or writing the content that got them onto the site, or just paying for those people to come onto the site via PPC or running ads elsewhere that drove people onto the site. So this is incredibly wasteful. And actually, this is the exact situation that one of our clients was in when they came to us asking for help. They had a 0.5% conversion rate, meaning that they basically had this isn't just a leaky bucket. This is a bucket where like most of the bottom of the bucket is just a massive hole. And there's like a tiny little island of bottom bucket, which is saving a few droplets of water, but most of the water just pouring straight through. So it's very difficult to justify marketing a website with stats like this because, of course, the performance is so poor. Now, what we did in this case is we managed to rebuild them a website using the principles which we're going to be running through today. And it did a fantastic job for them. And in fact, if you fast forward to today, when they drive the 1,000 visitors to their shiny new site. This isn't their site, by the way. They wouldn't be too impressed if I was giving you the exact data from their website. So this is a picture of Shinobi building the website, which is how we get all of our websites built. 1,000 visitors to this new website, rather than generating 5 leads, generates 89 leads instead. So this is obviously a significant increase in improvement. It means that they don't have to do any more marketing to get these leads. They can do the same marketing, or we improve their marketing as well, actually, but that's another story. But even if they were just doing exactly the same stuff, they've gone from 5 leads to 89 leads every week, month, hour, whatever the time frame is that these 1,000 visits. So a 17.8x increase in conversions without any additional marketing. So that's why this CRO stuff is so important, because the performance of your website is the performance of your digital marketing. And by the way, if at any point you're watching this today and you think, do you know what? I just need to talk to the ninjas. I just need some help with this stuff. Then you can contact our team. If you just go to exposure.ninja/CRO, at that link, you'll find a little booking thing where you can book a time to talk to us. If you want some help with this, we can rebuild your website. We can help you improve the performance of your website. Our dev team is incredible. They build amazing websites. So you can just book a time to talk to us through there if you like. If you do that, there's not going to be any pressure. We won't try and sell you anything that you don't need. None of that. We'll talk to you, find out if we can help you. And if we can, then of course, we'll give you some next steps on exactly how that would happen. So let's talk about this process that we're using then. How do we do that thing where we go from a 0.5% conversion rate to that 8.9% conversion rate, all those 84 additional leads for exactly the same amount of traffic? Well, we break this CRO thing down into basically 3 stages. Firstly, auditing and analysis, then tracking and testing, and thirdly, optimization. And what we're going to do today in this session is go through each of these and talk about some of the exercises, some of the things that you can do in each of these phases. And I'm going to show you some examples based on those exercises as well. And what I really want to do today is not focus on specific sort of tactics like, change this form to this, or put this button here, or, you need to use this template layout. What I want to do instead is describe our approach to this so that you can apply that same approach to your business. Because I think one of the misconceptions, and actually one of the mistakes that I think we may have made in the past, is sort of standardizing CRO advice across every different business. And what we found is that really the more you can understand a particular business and the customers of that business, the better the CRO work that you can do. So you really do need a tailored sort of bespoke approach for all of this stuff. Although, of course, having said all of that, there are some very common elements that run through all of this. I can see we've got some people who have just tuned in. So like I said at the start, if you've got any questions, stick them in the YouTube comments thing, and I'll be able to answer them as we go along, or I can answer them at the end during some Q&A. So these 3 stages, they never really stop. They exist in this sort of constant cycle. CRO is never ending, as we will see, because however much you've improved the performance of your website, there is typically always further that you can go. We saw the example of the site that went from a 0.5% conversion rate to a 8.9% conversion rate. Well, imagine that they had gone from 0.5% and then they stopped at 2%. They're like, we've made some improvements. This is great. We've got to 2%. Great. We're happy with this. We got 4 times the number of leads for the same traffic. But they hadn't stopped. They could have gone a little bit further. They could have got to 4% and then 8% and then 8.9%. So you can see that there's always further to go with this stuff until you get to a point of diminishing returns. So this process never really finishes. But let's go through the 3 stages in turn. I'll give you some exercises that you can play with as we go. Okay, so first stage then, auditing and analysis. This is really about finding out where you're at and doing a bit of an initial, I guess, a bit of a recce, a bit of a survey to work out, okay, where are the opportunities here? Most of the time, we're going to use data to inform this. And the main source of most of our data, most of us these days, is GA4, because Google has taken away the analytics that we knew and loved and given us this horrible beast that nobody really fully understands. Nevertheless, we're going to have to get used to it. So GA4 can provide us some really useful data, albeit packaged in a slightly strange way. So I'm going to talk through this screenshot and exactly what it means. But first things first, with GA4, you'll notice that as if it wasn't bad enough, Google has recently changed some of the phrasing inside GA4. So you won't actually see conversion rate mentioned because conversions have disappeared. Conversions are now key events. Snappy, easy to remember, not. So therefore, the conversion rate is now the session key event rate. Super easy and memorable, right? So this is no longer CRO, this is SKERO. No, it's not. I'm joking. This is still CRO. Google is hopefully going to change this back because it's a disaster, but there we go. So what are we looking at in this chart and how does it sort of help us with CRO? Well, I appreciate the digits are a little bit small, but broadly what we can see, and I've blurred out the names of this because this is a client screenshot, but broadly what we can see here is the landing page that traffic is coming in from. Hopefully you can see my mouse wiggling around there. These are the landing pages that visitors are coming into the site from. Then we've got some statistics, we've got some data about what's going on with those visitors and how they're using the site. Then over here, we've got the key events or the conversions. So we've got the number of key events that have happened from this amount of traffic. And then the last column is this session key event rate or the conversion rate. So this shows us the relative performance, the relative conversion rate of each of the different pages on the site. Now, you might be able to see, if you're really eagle-eyed, you might notice that this top page here, the one that's number 2, and then this second, or the third page here, the one that's in number 4 position, these are both landing pages. So these are landing pages that our team has built for this client's pay-per-click advertising. And now if we go along to the far right-hand side, you'll see the conversion rates of these landing pages is actually very different. This top landing page is converting at 3.7%, which is actually pretty good for this website, for this niche. You can see it's actually outperforming the home page, which has a conversion rate of 3.19%, and it's outperforming the website average of 3.56%. So 3.7% is fairly decent, particularly as this ad campaign is targeting fairly broad range of keywords. So we're getting a lot of top of funnel traffic here, and we're casting a fairly wide net with this particular page. But look at this page here, this second landing page. The conversion rate here is 19.05%. That means this client is getting 1 lead for every 5 visits on that page, which is absolutely huge. The average order value of these leads, by the way, is significant. This is an incredible statistic. The performance of this page is absolutely ludicrous, of course. But why are we looking at this here? Well, we're looking at this here to illustrate the importance of auditing your existing pages on your site. What would the next step be? Of course, the next step is to figure out what's going so well with this page and how can we learn the lessons and apply those lessons to the other pages on the site, in particular, this other landing page. And that's why analyzing and auditing is a great first step with CRO, because we want to make sure that we're learning the lessons from the best performers rather than the worst performers. There's some more interesting data in this screenshot as well. These other pages here, which I've just, these are the 13th and 14th highest traffic landing pages on the site. And these are basically different product pages. So this client sells lots of different products, and these are 2 different product pages. Now, although the data is relatively low, we've got a small number of sessions for each of these pages. Actually, the statistics do track as you increase the time period and increase the data. But look at the relative performance of these 2 pages. The first of these service pages or product pages is converting at 3.61%, which is right about average for this website. But the second one is only converting at 0.39%. So it's converting at 1/10 of the rate of this first page. So again, more useful insight, right? So the next step will be to go and look at the difference in performance between those two pages and work out what lessons do we need to take from the better performer that we can apply to the lower performer. So this is why it's really important to analyze this data. And by the way, this also demonstrates why there's always more work to be done with CRO. We built this website, okay? This website is performing extraordinarily compared to others in the space and the client's website before we optimized it. So that's fantastic. It's doing really well. But even so, even though the website as a whole is doing really well, we still have pages on here. I would argue that this bottom page is a bit of a loser. So even though the website has been built really well and it's working nicely, well, it's still got a page on it which is a loser, which is why this is a continual process. Of course, we also need to be mindful that just because we've done something new doesn't mean it's always better. Anyone who's had a website designed and built by like a fancy design firm that prioritizes design and look and feel over the conversion performance will have experienced this. And over the last year, I've been buying or contacting lots of digital agencies and talking to different digital agencies about acquiring them. And a lot of these agencies have been website development firms. And I've been staggered at the small number of website development firms that really understand and build for conversion. Most of these are building for creativity or design. They're either design first or they're typically like technical first, but very few of them view a website as what I think it should be, a marketing asset, which is designed to turn visitors into leads and conversions, because ultimately that's what all of our marketing should do. It should make us money. And that's what your website should do as well. So just because you're having something new built doesn't necessarily mean it's better. You need to build these principles in from the start. Okay, let's talk about calls to action and the traffic that you're getting to your website, because obviously the performance of your website is also going to depend on the types of visitors that you're bringing in. Calls to action. So the calls to action are the things that you want people to do on your page, okay? The things that you want people to do on your page. We need to make sure that those calls to action are appropriate for where the visitors are at. So we need to make sure that we're asking people to do something that they're likely to do, okay? Now, on the Exposure Ninja website, you'll see that there are two calls to action. There are two main calls to action. There are also some sort of secondary calls to action here as well, but two main ones are request your free review, which you'll see given pride of place here and also in the menu. And then you'll see a secondary call to action, which is talk to a ninja. Now, you'll often hear us talking about having a secondary call to action, because in a situation where you are, let's say that you're a software company, right? And your primary call to action is get a demo or book a demo of our software. You see this quite a lot. Well, a lot of the visitors that come to that website aren't going to be ready to get a demo yet. They're not going to be ready to book a demo. That's going to feel too high commitment. So what we'll often recommend is having a secondary call to action, which is lower commitment. Now, in the Exposure Ninja case here, we've actually taken the reverse process, because requesting a free website and marketing review is actually something that appeals to people at the top of the funnel, the top of the buyer funnel. Our secondary call to action is actually higher commitment. So it's for people that don't even need to do that. They know they just want to work with us. So in that case, the CTA talk to a ninja makes sense for them. So I want you to think about this idea that you want to match the call to action to how ready your customer or your website visitor is going to be, because that's what we're going to be looking at in the next couple of slides. So let's do another example. Let's imagine that you are your marketing manager for a national accounting firm, and you help businesses with their tax accounting. Well, you might be ranking on Google for a whole bunch of different terms. Let's just look at two of them and think about the different type of traffic that you're going to be getting for each of these queries. Let's say that you've got an incredible tax guide on your website, which ranks for a whole bunch of phrases, including what is tax? Now, I don't need to tell you, the traffic that you're going to get for a phrase like this has very little commercial intent. So if you had a call to action on the page that ranks for what is tax, which said, book a call with one of our team to get started with our accountancy service. Well, obviously, you're not going to get any conversions from that, right? That conversion rate is going to be super low, because someone searching for what is tax, the likelihood that they're ready to buy is like basically zero. In fact, if someone's searching for what is tax, they are so basic that we can almost guarantee they're going to be nowhere near needing an accountant. Whereas if you're also ranking for a phrase like best NHS VAT accountant Surrey, that's a very different type of traffic, isn't it? That's someone who's much more qualified and has what we call commercial intent. So if they've got commercial intent and they're much more qualified, we want to direct them to a CTA which is appropriate for where they're at. In this case, we might be saying, if you're looking for an NHS VAT accountant in Surrey, fill in this form to talk to one of our team today, or give us a call on XYZ. We might then incentivize that by offering some sort of free consultation or an audit of their current NHS VAT accountancy process or something like that. So we want to think about this idea of the buyer funnel, and we want to make sure that we've got a call to action that's right for the stage that the visitor is going to be at. And this is going to vary from page to page. The service or product pages on your website are going to have a different intent. They're going to serve a different type of customer to the information pages on your site through your blog or your knowledge base or your resources section. A lot of that traffic might be more informational in nature, so we want to make sure we've got a suitable CTA. It's not, of course, just about the CTA that we offer. It's also about how we word and how we position the CTA. Sort of a running joke in the world of Exposure Ninja is that talk to sales CTA. If you go on a website and you see a little button that says talk to sales, well, what do you think is going to happen? How valuable do you rate that interaction? Are you looking forward to that? Are you excited about the idea of talk to sales? Do they have to hold you back because you're in danger of smashing through your mouse button because you're just so desperate to talk to sales? Probably not. Whereas get a free quote, whilst essentially it's exactly the same thing, actually gets you closer to your goals because you probably need a quote before you can make some sort of decision about whether to go ahead. Of course, the thing itself is identical, right? Who's doing the quotes? Obviously, it's the sales team, but just how it's worded can make a difference to conversion rate because one seems more appealing and focuses on the business, one seems less appealing because it's just talking about the business. It's talking from the business's perspective, whereas the other seems more appealing because it's actually focused on what the customer or the searcher gets from that interaction. So we really want to focus on what the customer gets. We want to present our CTA in a way that sounds attractive and appealing to them. A couple examples from different software websites in this case. So see products and pricing. Now that's quite a low commitment CTA. It's something that can work for informational queries and really sort of middle of the funnel. I'd say those sorts of visitors. See products and pricing, quite gentle, feels very low commitment. Try Rike for free. So Rike is a project management software tool. Try Rike for free is slightly higher commitment, because you're actually having to put some time in to do that thing. So you're not just spending a couple of seconds looking at something. So notice what Rike has done in this case is they've offered a lower commitment secondary CTA, which is discover Rike in 3 minutes with a little video icon. This is actually really clever because what they've done is they've shown you that this is going to be a video by using the icon, and then the 3 minutes is basically objection handling for I don't have ages to do this. Well, that's fine, we can just show you in 3 minutes. So I really like this type of approach where you offer 2 CTAs, neither of which feels particularly high commitment, but both which get the customer closer to their goals. And I think this type of thing is exactly what we'd expect to be converting better. We also want to think about how we word and how we position like a contact form CTA on our site. For a lot of lead generation businesses or businesses that offer a service, a contact form is going to be their primary CTA. And something like this, where we're actually selling the benefits of this and explaining what they're going to get, can work quite well. So there's a few words in here that sort of imply benefits and strength rather than just, hey, subscribe to our newsletter. You can see also that there's a how can we support you drop-down icon, which would allow the sales team to then sort of pre-qualify and maybe triage this lead to different places. So this is all part of the auditing and analysis phase of CRO. This is the sort of initial research that we're doing just to work out where the low-hanging fruit is. And for a lot of businesses, this type of stuff can bear some, incredible results. There's often enough to get in here that you can actually make a significant impact. If you want to go slightly deeper, you can also look for some other types of physical evidence. For example, using things like Hotjar, which is something that we can do for our clients. So we use heat mapping software like Hotjar to just see how people are using a site, so the things that they're clicking on and how far down the page they're scrolling. For example, here we can see a demo heat map from Hotjar, which just shows how far down a page people scroll. And if you spend lots of time looking at Hotjar analysis and Hotjar recordings, you'll notice that people don't tend to get very far down a page. You can see there the 50% line is where the green turns into blue. That one there, that's the 50% line, meaning that only 50% of visitors on this page ever got to pass that point. And what you'll sometimes see is that a business has put their CTA below that point, meaning as soon as they do that, 50% of the visitors on that page never going to convert because they don't even see the CTA in the first place. So then they've got to try and get loads of conversions out of the remaining visitors. Well, they've already disqualified half of the people by just burying it, by putting it too far out of reach. So it doesn't really make sense doing that. You want to present your CTA in a way that most people who see it can convert. It really helps in these types of situations as well to take a bit of an outsider's perspective. So because you are incredibly familiar with your website, you know your business, you know the services that you offer, you know everything about the history of your business. You probably helped design your website. So your website is incredibly familiar to you. You know where everything is. You don't need to think about it. And therefore, it can seem obvious to other people that other people should know what they should do on your website as well. Well, you really do need an outsider's perspective. The best way I could think to illustrate this is, when you go to a foreign country and you get off the airplane and you're absolutely wired, right? Your eyes are wide, you're taking in all the information, you're trying to work out, what does this mean? What does this mean? Where do I need to go? How do I get to my onward destination? You're completely wired because you're in a completely unknown environment. Well, that's like your visitors on your website. They don't know. They've never been to your thing before. They don't know what you sell. They don't know anything about you. So they are in a really sort of unknown, wide-eyed state. Meanwhile, the person next to you who does this trip 3 times a week, they know exactly where they're going. They don't even lift their head up. They're just on their phone with their AirPods in, just know exactly where to go. Well, that's like you because you're familiar with your website. So it can help to have an outsider's perspective when analyzing your CRO in this audit and analysis phase. Of course, you can use a software like usertesting.com where you can pay people to go on your website and give you feedback. The Exposure Ninja free website and marketing review also does exactly this. The team analyze your site from an outsider's perspective because we haven't seen it before. But of course, we do have a decent knowledge of CRO and what it takes to make a website convert. Let's talk about forms and data. So one of the mistakes that we often see being made when a website is built by a committee, particularly if there's lots of operational people in the website building group, is that you end up with a form like this, a call to action, a conversion form that's like this. Now, of course, there are lots of logical reasons why a business would need to ask for each of these different pieces of information. Sales says, wait, this person's email didn't work. So you go, okay, cool. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to get them to confirm their email in case they make a spelling mistake. Or someone says, oh, I just tried to sell one of our existing clients some things. And, the person who's managing that account got really annoyed because I should have passed it to them. So you're like, okay, great. So let's get them to choose whether they're an existing client or a new client. Or 2 departments need to work out who gets each lead. So you say, right, let's ask people to choose which area of law that query relates to. And then people are like, well, yeah, but that's not my area of speciality. So, okay, please select the issue that your query. What we're forcing the user to do here is to do the work, to triage themselves to the right place in the business. The downside of all of this is that for every additional field you ask someone to fill in, you're usually going to see a drop in conversions. So if you just want to maximize the volume of conversions that you're getting, usually you want to make it as simple as possible to do the thing that you're asking people to do. And that typically means shorter forms. Of course, there are times where you might want to actually repel people who can't be bothered to fill in all the details on a form. And to an extent, that's what we do with the Exposure Ninja website and marketing review form. If you go through that form, you will see an example of how we've added more questions, not just because we need to, but actually because if someone can't be bothered to spend 3 minutes filling in a form, we don't want to go through like a 30, 35, 40-minute process of researching and recording their review for them, because they're probably not going to watch it anyway. So in some cases, you actually want to suppress conversions, but that has to be a very tactical choice. You don't want to be doing it accidentally like this. The next part of this auditing and analysis process is competitor research and having a look at what your competitors are doing. So anytime we're building a website or we're doing CRO for a client, we're also having a look at what others in their space are doing. Now, a lot of the time, this doesn't mean that we're actually changing anything on their website, because in a lot of industries, our clients' competitors are totally clueless. So whilst we might be looking at their websites, we're not thinking, wow, there's some really great stuff going on here. A lot of the time we're thinking, this is junk, we're really far ahead. But sometimes you do find some nice things that people have done on their site, clever ideas for CTAs or ways of structuring their pages, which make a lot of sense. And if we have time at the end, we can do some competitor analysis as well. So that's phase one, this auditing and analysis process. And it's really key to do this at the start of the conversion rate optimization before you start just jumping in and changing some things. You first need to analyze exactly where you're at. Step two is all about tracking and testing. We need to make sure that we've got accurate data about how our website is performing. And ideally, we'd benchmark this before we do the work so that we could then compare afterwards, so that we could prove the value of the CRO to anyone who's above us in the organization. And this is really important. We're going to use a mixture of quantitative and qualitative research in this phase. So some of the quantitative research, some of the quantitative data that we're going to collect before we start this work, which will both help us identify where we're going to focus, but also help us benchmark performance so that we can come back and compare afterwards, are things like landing page performance, which we looked at in that GA4 screenshot earlier. We might look at time spent on the page. Are our pages actually keeping people on them, or are people just immediately leaving because it doesn't really seem relevant to them? What are the highest traffic pages on the site? This can help us identify the areas that we need to put more attention into because we have a real opportunity to get some leverage because we've got so many people visiting this page. What are the highest conversion pages? How are they performing against average? How are they performing against the worst performing pages, and what sort of lessons can we learn there? Then, of course, we can use the heat mapping and then the funnel and form analysis as well, which we just looked at. So those are some examples of the quantitative research. And a lot of the time you'll hear people in conversion rate optimization talking about A/B testing, and this can be something that can make a lot of sense in certain circumstances, so long as there is enough traffic to actually drive meaningful statistical results. So A/B testing, very straightforward. You test two variations of a page to see which one performs better. Usually you're doing this to look for incremental performance improvements, or because you're testing a particular thesis. For example, in this client, for this client that we did this A/B test for, we wanted to test whether adding a form fill secondary CTA suppressed the number of phone calls that they were receiving. Because on the one hand, we want to give their website visitors more options to get in contact, but on the other hand, we knew from speaking to this client and their customers that actually the phone call conversions were going to be the most valuable. So what we didn't want to do is just add the form if it meant that people who would have otherwise called us now just filled in the form. So things like this allow you to test thesis like that by doing a split test and working out what the data shows you. But really, conversion rate optimization, although most of what we've spoken about so far has been about data, a lot of the real power in this and a lot of the most transformational results that we've generated for clients have actually come from qualitative research. So not just looking in GA4, but actually, shock horror, speaking to people. I know, disgusting, right? What's the point of, working remotely and being on computers all the time if you actually have to talk to people? But guess what? It can really, really help CRO. And in fact, when we build a website, we have different ways of building this. But one of the most advanced ways when we're doing a website project that we can do this is we actually talk to a business's customers first, and we get some really good understanding of how those customers are thinking, what they're looking for. We have a service called the Brand Accelerator, which does this, where we'll contact a whole bunch of our clients' customers and we'll talk to them on the phone, and we'll ask them questions like, what were your pain points prior to dealing with this business? Why did you choose to go with this business rather than another one? What previous experience did you had in this space? These types of questions help to give us an insight into what's going to work for this particular business's audience. And that allows us to tailor our work much more specifically to that particular business. This is an amazing, amazing service, really powerful. And I can tell you, not many people who are building websites are thinking at this level. Most people who build websites just start with a blank screen and decide what the designer wants. They don't really start from what the customer wants. And if you want to get the sort of conversion rates that we've been talking about so far, you really have to go to that customer and think about what's their motivations and their drivers. What we'll end up doing is some sort of before and after, like this example for, this is for Robert runs a very great but a very small business. But you can see that just by doing this service, the before and after transformation is incredible. Because we spoke to his customers, we found out what was most important to them. And that allowed us to do things like raise certain USPs about this business, which maybe weren't so obvious to him because he was inside the business. It allowed us to do things like add the video introduction, because we knew that was going to be important because he was so great on camera and his customers mentioned that they'd got really familiar with him in video. So this type of approach allows you to not just influence the design and branding of a business when you're working on that, but also even their homepage layout, which is quite significant. And actually, I've just invested in a business in a completely different area, not digital marketing related at all. And the first thing that we do for the business that I've invested in, is we're doing exactly this process. We're going right back to the start, the branding accelerator, talking to customers, finding out what makes them tick, and then going through the whole process of branding the business according to the feedback from those customers, and then building the website based on all of that data, because that gives us a much better base to work from than just saying, okay, what do we think this website needs to look like? Well, let's go back to the customers and let's ask them. Okay, another type of qualitative research, of course, the competitor analysis falls into this category as well. So this is doing the same sort of analysis that we've looked at here, just for your competitors. You don't have the data, but you can still look through the sites. And once you've spoken to your customers and you've collected data about your own site, you get a pretty good idea about whether they're doing a good job or a bad job and which things you might want to steal or borrow. Okay, optimization, step number 3. Or CRO step number 3 is optimization. Pretty unsexy, this one. Optimization just means doing it all again, right? And if we go back to those stats at the start, what's the difference between a 0.5% converting website and a 9% converting website? Well, it's probably that the 9% converting website didn't give up. They kept testing things. They kept tweaking things over and over again. Sometimes you can get huge conversion rate improvements in one go, but a lot of the time it takes continual tracking, measuring, theorizing, talking to customers, watching what happens in the data, and then continually making these improvements. So when we build a website, if we've got a client that we've built a website for example, we will keep an eye on their conversion rate over time, working out what we need to do to figure out how to improve that website even further. It's never done, right? It's always continually being improved. I just wanted to give you some stats on some conversion rates as well. If you've got any questions, by the way, stick them in the chat because we're about to get to the Q&A section. But just wanted to give you some stats on conversion rates on different types of sites. And these come from Exposure Ninja builds and the sites that we've analyzed. Now you can see that each of these different types of sites has quite a wide spread. That's fairly typical. And of course, that's the exact conversion rate is going to be based on the difference between the types of traffic that are coming onto the site and also how high a commitment the product is. For example, if you're an e-commerce business selling, I'm sure if the Tesla website, for example, had a 2% conversion rate on people buying cars, they'd probably be very, very, very happy with that. Whereas if you're selling like a $10 tripwire product through Facebook ads, if you've got a 2% conversion rate, you're probably underwater, right? So it obviously depends on the thing that you're selling and the commitment level, but it just goes to show what sort of range is possible. So a lead generation site that we've rebuilt recently, we took their old conversion rate from 1.4%, their new one's over 7.5%. So 1.4 to 7.5. So that's what, like a 5x increase in leads from the same traffic. And then, by the way, we've blown up their traffic as well. Local services. So an example here, weight loss clinic that we worked with. So we didn't even build this website, but we just worked with them to optimize it. And we got it to just under 3%, which is an incredible transformation for that business, because that's really, their website was performing awfully. And by changing some things, by adding some calls to action, by changing the structure of some of the pages, we're able to improve this. But this just goes to show why you're never sort of finished. You never just hand this off and walk away, because let's say you got from 0.5 to 2%. Well, you might be partying because you just 4x your leads, but could you get it to 4? Could you get it to 8? Could you get it to 10? Right? There's always more to be done. So should you do something about this? Well, here are the 3 sort of areas I'd suggest. If you meet any of these criteria, I would suggest doing something about this stuff. So if your conversion rate could be better, if you've got a poor conversion rate, and by poor, let's say you're under maybe 2%, right? If you're under 2%, you should probably do something about this. Everyone should probably do something about it. If you're under 2%, you should definitely do something about it. Let's say it like that. So don't waste more marketing budget sending traffic to a website that doesn't deserve it. We see this time and time again when people request free marketing reviews and they say to us, ninjas, help us with our SEO or help us with our pay-per-click. And we look at their website and say, we will be pouring more water into a very, very leaky bucket. It's absolutely pointless. This website does not deserve more traffic. You need to fix this thing, right? You need to fix this thing first, then send more traffic to it. If you don't have time to spend on this, you might be tempted to just leave it. If you don't have time to spend on this, I would suggest finding some help, right? We've got some free help from the ninjas, or we can help you as a client if you want. But if you don't have time to spend on this, it's really kind of important. Again, it's an area that not many sort of marketing managers specialize in, conversion rate optimization. And it's something that can be very difficult for business owners as well, because they know one website. They don't get to see across hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of websites like we do at Exposure Ninja. So they know what their performance looks like, but they don't know, could it be better? And what other ideas could they be implementing? And if you have active marketing campaigns, then of course your campaign performance basically is your website's performance. If you're driving loads and loads of paid ads and your website sucks, well, you're not going to do very well. Right? If your website's awesome and you're driving loads of paid ads, those paid ads are going to look incredible, right? The results on that is going to be insane. So your website performance really is the best way to lower your CPA and increase your revenue without spending money on more traffic. Troubadour, great questions. I will come to them in just a second. Now, of course, you do have some options here, and Exposure Ninja can help you with some of these. So you can fix your existing website. This is one way to do it. If you have a website which is doing reasonably, or you really don't have the budget for a new website, then you can just fix this up and we can help you with this if you need. We can build you a new website, and we can even build you a new website and go back to the customers and go back to the branding and sort of redo the entire journey, like the business that I've invested in. So we can help you with either of those if you need some help with that. And all of the websites that we build are built with conversion rate optimization and SEO in mind. We don't build them just to look pretty. Of course, they have to look good because that's very important for first impressions and conversions. But they're not designed just to look good. They're designed to work. They're designed to get your customers filling in your forms, buying your products, generating revenue for you. Or your other option, of course, is to do absolutely nothing. But typically, that's not the best one. And that's probably not the one that you're erring towards if you're 43 minutes into a conversion rate optimization webinar. So if you want any help with any of this, then of course you can go to exposure.ninja/CRO. That's exposure.ninja/CRO. When you go to that, you will see a booking thing. So you can book a call with one of the team. And this isn't like a sales call where we're going to try and hardcore close you on anything at all. We will just talk to you about your business and your website's performance. If we think that we can help, if we think that CRO would make sense, then we can recommend some options for you. But there's no pressure. We don't sell people who don't need our services. And if we don't think that we're a good fit for you, we will absolutely tell you. Okay, we're really, really relentless about that. We do not hard sell Exposure Ninja. If we think it's the best thing for you and we can see that it's going to make money for you, then we will do it. But if we don't, then we won't. Okay. Right, let's do some Q&A now. So if you've got any questions about conversion rate optimization or your own website's performance, then feel free to whack them in the chat. And of course, if you need some help, then you can talk to the team here at Exposure Ninja. All right, we got a few questions from Troubadour. Great questions. Are there any best practices when it comes to website navigation for CRO? This is a really good question. Yes, I think the basic principle here is you want to get people to the pages that are right for them as quickly as possible. And you want to do this without forcing them to hunt. So you want to make every choice logical and simple, okay? So typically how this would work is if you've got a very large site with loads of pages, you want to offer people very straightforward choices at every stage. Department stores are a great example of this, right? How they categorize their products, which are across many different departments, many different types of products. If you think about a store like John Lewis in the UK, right? Thousands and thousands of different SKUs. So they have to categorize everything in a very logical way so that people can go to the department and then go to the sub-department and then get to the product that they want. So really, we just want to get people to the pages that they want as soon as possible. Drop downs can be a great way of doing this because we're not forcing people to have to click on something, wait for a page to load, click on the next thing, wait for a page to load. Every time you're relying on a page load, you're typically losing people. So just make it as simple and straightforward as you can. And that's one area that user testing can be really beneficial because you can see people getting stuck in those types of things. What kind of traffic should a website get before considering A/B testing? There is a great statistical answer to this question. Usually it's a function of how long you're also willing to wait, right? So if you're getting like 10,000 visitors a month, well, you're going to have to wait a long time to see statistically significant results on two very close variants. So usually it's something that's, much larger sites that are maybe, 10,000 visits plus per month. But really, I'd say it's also a function of like how dramatic the differences are between the variations that you're testing as well. Because if you're testing a completely different page, you might see a wild swing in the performance. Whereas if you're testing just a very minor difference, like a color or something, you're going to see a much narrower result. Most of the tools like Google Optimize, they will tell you when you've got a statistically significant result, and they'll tell you the level of confidence they have in the result that they're showing you as well. Troubadour also says, is the homepage generally the most important page to focus your CRO efforts on? That is a great question. No, it is typically a very important page because a lot of the direct traffic, a lot of the branded traffic that you get is going to come through your homepage. So it's usually one of the highest traffic landing pages on the site. So it is a very important page to work on. But a lot of your cold traffic is actually going to come through your sub pages, particularly product or service pages, because those are often going to be the ones that are going to rank on Google or the ones that you're going to be running ads to. You don't often run ads to your homepage unless your homepage has really been designed for that purpose. And the sub pages, weirdly, are very rarely thought about from a CRO perspective. Normally, a website is designed as basically a homepage, and then we design some other, it's like the first child is the homepage. Great, here we go, the first child. Look at the homepage. Everyone, look at this beautiful homepage. What about the second child? Oh, yeah, they're out there somewhere. And then, oh, yeah, we got the second pages and we got some sub pages there with our services on them or something like that. Right. And people don't really think about it. But actually, your sub pages are often the ones that rank on Google. If you've got different services that you're offering, each of those sub pages is going to be optimized to rank for those services. So you really need to think about the CRO on those because that's going to be your cold traffic that often has a lot of commercial intent. Lookout News says, what's the best testing tool for a website? Yeah, VWO that Dale recommended is pretty good. That's not ours. Visual Website Optimizer it is. You can just go to visualwebsiteoptimizer.com. Oh, Jeff asks, what are the most common things websites get wrong when it comes to CRO? This is a great question. So one of the most basic things is actually they don't really do a good job of explaining what they do or who they do it for. And this sounds really obvious, but if you think about how familiar people are with their own websites, sometimes the cold traffic lands on the site and it's almost like there's an expected level of knowledge about the page or about the business or about the location that it services, which isn't communicated on the landing page, which means that that person is immediately confused, right? I'll give you an example. I'm trying to think how to phrase this because they're a client of ours. I mean, yeah, here's another example. We had a client who came to us and actually if you visited their page or any page on their website, you couldn't really actually work out what they did. And we had to do some real work with them to sort of get distilled out of their heads. What do you actually do? And how do you explain that to people in a plain English way? So because they are so advanced in their field, they know their area so much, they sort of assumed all that knowledge. So don't assume any knowledge. And things like location, really important. If location is important to your business, you need to state your location on every page because that is going to be that's going to be a blocker to conversion. If people can't work out if you're the right location for them, they just won't convert. So that's one mistake is sort of implied knowledge. Another mistake is like unknowns in the CTA form. So if you're talking about like a lead generation site, let's say that you're looking to generate leads through a form, they'll say like book a free consultation. You put your details in, but it's like, well, what's going to happen? What format is that going to take? Who's right for this? Like they just assume that people are going to do it just because it's a consultation. So sort of handling those objections and working through that type of thing can also make a big difference. John says, thank you for completing the brand accelerator for us. We're really pleased with the results, especially in the new logo. Great, John. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's an awesome piece of work and really looking forward to seeing it. Are there any issues for SEO and A/B split testing with canonicals, etc.? I saw some debate recently around claiming that canonicals have been causing issues. Not if you set them up properly, Jeff. Not if you set them up properly. Is it okay for me to remove the About Us section from my homepage? So About Us section is one of those things that I think people... Firstly, a lot of times the About page is like the ego page. This is where people think, oh, finally, we can talk about ourselves. Great Uncle Albert who set up this company in 1902. Nobody cares about Uncle Albert, right? What they care about is their goals and whether you can deliver what they need. So even the About Us section shouldn't really be about you. It should be about the visitor and why you are perfect to help them. So of course, you might describe your business, you might describe some of your staff to people, but you don't really want to make this self-indulgent. The point there isn't like, you see a lot of law firms, for example, where all the partners have to be featured and they all have to be nice and prominent on the page and we have to talk about all that. Nobody cares, right? What they care about is, are you going to get me out of this situation that I'm in? So I think all About Us pages and sections have to be viewed from the right direction, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the time, this is a very misused tool. Now, whether it lives on your homepage or not, this really depends on your audience. I think this is one of those areas where that sort of customer research can be really useful because you can find out if people are choosing you because of your expertise or your team's expertise. Great, this is a selling point that deserves pride of place. If actually that stuff isn't relevant, there might be something more useful you can use in that space, like testimonials or case studies or reviews or, different sub-services that you offer. So I think this is really about the importance of your credibility and your experience to the sale and let that make the deciding factor. Because for some businesses, it's very important. For others, it's much less important or it's completely irrelevant. Have you ever worked with photography service clients? How far do you think you can push conversion rate for this luxury service? Yes, we have, Dennis. Not for a while now, because to be brutally honest, we are not cheap. But I'm not saying that photography businesses are cheap, and but obviously it takes a certain level of business to be able to afford. To afford to work on, like professional CRO. Having said that, yeah, we've done loads of analysis on conversion rate for photography businesses. What I would say is you're in a space which is actually really well positioned to either benefit from this type of stuff or completely stitch yourself up. Because a lot of photographers think that they are making the sale because of the beauty of their photographs. Okay. Wedding photography is an example. So we've worked with lots of wedding photographers over the years, particularly in the early days of Exposure Ninja. And they all think that it's just about the photographs. And if they just show people enough photographs, people will come through and convert. Actually, it ain't about the photographs. And even if it is a little bit about the photographs, it's not about the photographs in the way that the photographer thinks it is, right? So as an ex-photographer, I can tell you, you think it's all about the lighting and the composition. Actually, the bride, who is often choosing the photographer, is more looking at, does the bride look good in these photographs? Okay, so even if it is about the photographs, it's not about the photographs in the same way. But a lot of the time, people are choosing their photographer based on other things other than just the photographs. So just thinking about your sales process, where your customer is at. They've probably never bought this service before, so they don't really know what's involved. So therefore, these sorts of top of funnel calls to action, like download the wedding planning guide or something along those lines, where they're actually really early in the research phase, they're just collecting their options, can be a great way of getting people at the top of funnel stage. And then when it comes to actually, going through and getting the quote, how can you incentivize people to get a quote from you rather than your competitors? And this might be by offering them some sort of free add-on or like a discount, 5% discount on your wedding package if you contact us to get a quote first, or whatever it might be, or a free second wedding book thing, the photograph book if you contact us today. So things like that you can do to incentivize those conversions. I think this can make a big difference. But conversion rate optimization can work for any business that is designed to generate leads or sales. CRO for Shopify. Yeah, good question, John. Things like the pop-ups for generating, for collecting the emails for browse and basket abandonment, absolutely killer. Making sure you've got the proper contact form, sign up forms for whatever you might be offering on your informational pages, also really important. A lot of the checkout functionality, unless you're in Shopify Plus, you won't have control over like the checkout functionality to be able to do things like add testimonials and reviews to the checkout pages. If you're in Shopify Plus, you can do that stuff. Or at least that's how it was last time I checked. So some of those things would definitely be stuff to think about. What's the best place for banners throughout your SEO content to drive conversions? By SEO content, I'm sure you just mean content, right? Because we're never just writing for SEO. But yeah, throughout, right? So think about where people are most likely to be ready to convert. So when we started this webinar, I didn't say go to exposureninja.cro to book a call now, because you wouldn't have been ready for it. So it's pointless. But I did say it after about, 4 or 5 minutes, knowing that might be the first time that you might be ready to talk to one of the team about having us help you with this. So you want to do a similar thing, and then you echo it throughout, right? Because people might be dipping in, they might be coming in halfway through an article, or they might get all the way to the end, and then you need one at the end as well, which is the CRO exposure.ninja/CRO CTA that I gave, which I'm giving right now. So I'd sort of echo it throughout, make sure that you're covering it for people who are just here to get a snapshot of info, for people who get what they need and then are ready to leave, and then for the people who get all the way to the bottom and dig through everything. How do you bring art to the top when it's not really defined as easy as a service or product? Artist, subjects, abstract landscape, things like this. So how do you optimize that? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I think what you might be asking, if this is about an artist, a website that's selling art. This is a good question, because what you're saying is this is essentially a visual sale, but the picture is the product, right? I think there's a few different ways that I'd approach this. Firstly, on your product pages, which are essentially the art pictures, you need to make sure that you've got a bunch of different CTAs, because you're going to have people who just want to buy the thing that they can see. You're also going to have people who might want to contact the artist to get a custom thing done. You might want people who contact to find about other stuff, particularly if you've got something which is marked sold out. You might want people who get in contact to inquire about other similar pieces. So I think you want different levels of CTA in that as well. And then when I'm thinking about driving organic traffic to the site, you might be trying to rank for, similar artist name alternatives. And in that type of case, you probably want deep links through to the different artist pages on your website, but also a contact form that allows people to just get in contact and let you know what they want. I expect this is going to be something that's quite difficult for people to type out exactly what they're looking for as well. So I think it really depends on exactly who you're selling to, but I'd think about the different levels of CTA that you're offering there. Is there a general rule of thumb for the maximum clicks a user would take on a path to purchase before we start seeing drop-off? I'd be really careful about anyone giving you a rule of thumb type thing on this. How I'd approach this instead is that every click that you require is going to involve some sort of drop-off, right? So you just want to simplify it as much as you possibly can. The Tesla booking page, the Tesla ordering page, for example, amazing. You can order a car in fewer clicks than it takes you to get through the boots.com checkout, from checkout to order confirmation, right? You've already got the products in your basket. It takes more clicks than it takes you to just order a freaking car from scratch on the Tesla.com website. So rather than thinking about like what's the maximum sort of step budget I've got to work with, I go sort of the other way and go, right, if I've got 0 clicks before people start dropping off, what's the fewest I can add in order to get someone to the conversion? Great, yes, forget about the photos. Yes, it's weird, isn't it? Because this is one of those things where, like the going back to the illustration of the foreign airport, we're so used to judging photographers by their pictures that we think this is all people look at. No. They just want a nice wedding. They just want to look really good. They just want to look really good in their wedding shots. Okay, great. Cool. Thanks, everyone. We're at time. Perfect time. Thanks so much for joining today. If you've got any further questions, then you can drop them in this chat, or you can always go to our website at exposureninja.com/review and request a free website and marketing review. Don't forget also to, if you're interested in some help with this stuff, go to exposure.ninja/CRO and book a call with one of the team. We're not going to try and sell you anything. We'll ask you about your business. We'll find out what's been going on for you. And if we think that we can help and it makes sense for you and we think that you'll make a lot of money from it, then we'll let you know. If we don't think that we can help, we won't try and sell you anything, right? It's going to be totally honest as always. Thanks everyone for joining, and I will see you next time. Peace out.